Working on a tennis roguelike game that I originally set out to do in 6 months. I want to talk to y'all today about the original structure of this 6-month project and ways that hopefully will be helpful to you to maybe make these decisions for yourself, get your creative projects out quicker, and move on to the next thing. Now, torso tennis is a unique situation. So it's a tennis roguelike where you play as a human torso, you gather limbs and tattoos in order to become better at tennis. Now, you play through a tennis season, you win the season, and that's the game. There are all sorts of enemies with different limbs that you can steal from them. You get a tattoo at the end of every week, which kind of changes the gameplay up. And I think it was a really awesome project for the 6-month structure. And let me talk about why. Now I'm going to squat here and tell you about this. I can't do that. So here's kind of how I went about structuring getting a video game done in 6 months. I think it helps to start with a project like a roguelike, where you can get a complete and playable version very early. That is kind of essential for this. So month 1, I treat as a game jam. You get that project done in one weekend. For Torso Tennis, I did it during Global Game Jam. Now, it's not going to be the shippable version, right? We still have many months ahead of us. But to get a workable version, a playable version of that game done in essentially the first week. Next, the second month is just content. You fill out your game with more stuff. And it's important that you kind of limit this to a very small amount of time. We'll get into this later, but I think that second month is where you're filling out that game jam project with some more levels or whatever it is. For a roguelike, you're just adding more items, you're tweaking the procedural generation to make it feel more alive and full, make each run more satisfying. Now, 3, 4, and 5, this is the real core of this kind of 6-month project structure that I was hoping to kind of work on. Now, I kind of hinted on this earlier, but playtesting and iteration is so important with game development that I think you should dedicate more time to doing that than the actual development of the game itself. Especially with something like a roguelike where it's run-based, things might change a little bit. So here's where you'll get a demo out and iterate on it. Maybe draw a little line here to show that this is a different stage. So you get the demo out and you start letting people play it and give you feedback. I incorporated a feedback form into the Torso Tennis demo, and I've gotten actually a lot of good feedback from players through that otherwise wouldn't have been able to speak to me through Steam or whatever. It's just like they fill out a box and say, hey, this boss is unfair, and then I go and fix it. So that demo and iteration loop is so important for getting your game to a more polished state. You've got all the content in there, you want to iterate on it, you want to get it better. So in practical terms for Torso Tennis, what this meant for the demo and iterate stage is I got the Steam page up, I got the Steam demo up, I submitted it into the Endless Replayability Fest in May of that year. I then submitted it to the Steam Next Fest in June of that year. That's the 5th month. So I was able to get the demo up. I was able to iterate on it. The game was pretty fun, pretty funny. Was adding content during this phase more than doing just kind of bug fixing. So I think this is kind of a hard deadline that you got to make sure you pay attention to. We'll put a little star on that, right? You really should just kind of be bug fixing during this demo and iterate stage. And I think I was still kind of jamming content into the game. And I did continue to jam content into the game after the 6 months. 6 months would be just promote and release. You post about it and you put it out there, right? I think, okay, so where did we go wrong with this project and how can you avoid going over scope in your projects? So this is a traditional walk backwards kind of approach to production. It wasn't like I was deciding what the scope of the game was and then deciding on how long the schedule was going to be. I knew I wanted to hit the Steam Next Fest in month 5 and I wanted to kind of release after that, right? So how did this go from hitting that Next Fest and then deciding not to release? That was the key decision point, right? Torso Tennis is awesome now. It's really great. I basically took this demo and iterate state and I multiplied it by 3. It was because I took a contract here in this month. And so I did some work outside of the project. And then when I came to the project, I lost the initial kind of scope of the project. I didn't give myself a hard deadline after that. I think that is important. If really always have an idea of where you're headed, kind of where's the goalpost here. The next couple goalposts I kind of set myself were very soft and very fuzzy compared to what this originally was. And so the development was allowed to carry on. It's this thing now. The game is better now because I did that. But then also I technically, no matter how the game does, I technically failed at my original goal of getting it done in 6 months. throw this out the window completely if you're just making games for fun. If you're just doing it out of passion, it's completely valid to just ignore all of this stuff and just make a game that you want to make because you want to make it, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. You can spend 20 years on it, and that's a beautiful thing. So what would my recommendation be to you if you're trying to get your project done in a short amount of time and you don't want to listen to the scope creep? You want to get your creative project done and out the door so you can move on to the next thing and make lots of things in your creative life that you're proud of. Well, I think what I would do is just remind myself of the original goal. I would just like name the name of the project. Maybe when I click on it every day to open it should be like the due date or like my original scope for the project, right? So at least I'm always reminded of that. I feel like it was easy to forget after Steam Next Fest that like, oh, like I had all of these ideas for like how to make the demo better, but really it should just be like, okay, after that we're shipping and moving on to the next thing. But who knows? The story is still to be told with Torso Tennis. We're gonna see, like maybe it was worth the time to do 3 times the development. We'll see. I'm currently finishing up the game, and if you want to hear from me on a regular basis, you can sign up for my Tomato Club newsletter. You can hear from me without all that social media garbage. You don't have to subscribe to me on YouTube. You can basically sign up for my email list and you just hear from me once a month and that's it.